And this is Ken Kraetzer for Sons of the American Legion Radio and our weekly Army football sports huddle. And we'll talk about Army's win on Saturday against Mercer to go 6-1 on the season. The announcement that the Army-Navy game will be played at Michie Stadium, and that the Independence Bowl has extended an invitation to Army to play in Shreveport, Louisiana in December. And with us from Pelham is Jack McGuirk, and from Florida, Richard Miller, and from Huntsville, Alabama, Sam Houston, a graduate of West Point, class of '87. Good to see you all. Why don't we go around the table and just starting with Jack, a few thoughts about the Mercer game.
It was a great win for Army. We all thought it was going to be a blowout win for Army, and turned out that's exactly what happened. Great game for Radigan and defense, and the pick six. We talked about that. And a great game for Army. And with those two stories you brought up, Army-Navy at West Point and the Independence Bowl. Interesting thing with the Independence Bowl, they're taking on a Pac-12 opponent, and the Pac-12 hasn't even started their season yet. So we'll have to figure out who they're going to be playing later in the season.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's based on the standings of the Pac-12, the end of the season. That is remarkable. Richard Miller, what was your thought watching the Army game against Mercer, a 49-3 win for the Black Knights?
Really dominant from start to finish. Great job controlling the ball. Great job running the ball. I thought it was a really dominant performance. Specifically, Sandy McCoy leading the way with a team high 3 touchdowns, as well as Tyrell Robinson scoring his first touchdown on a 53-yard reception. Great job controlling the ball and running the ball into the end zone for the touchdown, and holding only Mercer to 221 yards and just 1 field goal, and even no touchdowns. An outstanding performance.
Very good. Army had 297 yards rushing to 113 for Mercer. Army 360 yards on the day, gave up 221. And really, one of the keys was the 3 interceptions for Army. Good play by the defense. 3 interceptions by John Radigan, Cameron Jones, and Jabari Moore. Sam Houston, your thoughts watching the game down in Huntsville last week?
Game was everything that we expected it to be, everything that I thought it would be. Just a dominant performance. It was a blowout. The ghost of the Citadel clearly got the message across to the Army team that they weren't going to let a nail biter happen again to a FCS opponent. 49-3 was just slightly off what my prediction for the game had been. It's the kind of game an old grad like me likes to watch, because the game's never in question. You don't have to get stressed out about it. And as I watched the game with the West Point Society at a local watering hole here in Huntsville, we always stand up and sing On Brave Old Army Team after every Army touchdown. And it's not a private event, so there's other people there watching other games. And I'll tell you, by the end of the game, everybody in there was singing On Brave Old Army Team, because we sang it so many times. So we just need to teach them the alma mater. And then the nice icing on the cake was knowing that Army is now the first college football program in FBS to be extended and accepted a bowl invitation, and this being to the Independence Bowl in Shreveport, Bossier City, Louisiana. I plan to attend a game so long as attendance is allowed. I was at the last time Army appeared in the Independence Bowl after the '96 season, which was an incredible game, an unfortunate loss for the Army team at the very end of the game. But as far as fourth quarter comebacks, probably one of the most amazing comebacks I've ever seen in any college football game. And would highly recommend you go watch the highlights to that bowl game if you get a chance sometime. But, great to see that Army showed up. They were ready to play. They played 4 quarters. They dominated the game, and they rotated a lot of people off the bench into the game to get reps. And everyone who went into the game got their reps in and performed in a magnificent manner. So great win for the team. Yeah, and I heard part of your question. I think that what Coach Monken is doing is out of sheer necessity right now. He's got two young quarterbacks who've had very little reps. Prior to the UTSA game, they had no college reps. And he just wanted to mix it up and give them both some experience, because it's important. And this is just my opinion, obviously, but I think that Coach Monken is trying to create different sets to mix it up for the opposing defenses by using different quarterbacks, because they run very different. They run in very different styles, and their skill sets are different. But at the same time, he wants to build his depth so that any member of his depth has had the opportunity to start and has had the reps to where if they're called upon, if the chips are down and you're being called on, it isn't the first time you've ever touched the ball in a stressful situation. So I think it's a good practice for him. He also recognized that the stretch of the season that we just went through was not the what we would consider the toughest part of the schedule. I'm not trying to diss any of the opponents, but the tough part of the Army's schedule on paper is about to start.
Well, no doubt. Let's see, Richard Miller, you want to take us through the top 25 games from last week?
Yes, the top 25 games from last week. Coastal Carolina, number 25, beat Georgia. What?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Number 25, Coastal Carolina is now 5-0, beating Georgia Southern 28-14. Number 5, Ohio State picks up their first win of the season, beating Nebraska 52-17. North Carolina, number 14, beats number 23, NC State 48-21. North Carolina picks up their fourth win against one loss, while NC State drops to 4-2 on the season. Number 20, Kansas State taking on Kansas. Kansas is now 0-5, 55-14 in favor of Kansas State. Number 20 is now 4-1 on the season. The Syracuse falls to 1-5, dropping 47-21 to number 1 Clemson, which is now 6-0 on the season. Florida Atlantic University is now 1-1 on the season. Number 22 Marshall, 20-9 victory in that game. Number 2 Alabama Crimson Tide stay unbeaten at 5-0 with a 48-17 victory against Tennessee. Tennessee is now 2-3 on the season. Notre Dame 45-3 over Pitt. Notre Dame is ranked number 3 in the country, is now 5-0, while Pitt is 3-4 on the season. An overtime game in Indiana picking up an exciting win over Penn State, 36-35. Indiana is 1-0. Penn State, who's number 8, is now 0-1 on the season. Number 19, Virginia Tech is 3-2. So is Wake Forest, but Wake Forest picks up the win 23-16. Both teams are 3-2 on the season. Number 17, Iowa State, and number 6, Oklahoma State. 24-21 victory for the Oklahoma State Cowboys, now 4-0 on the season, ranked number 6 in the country. And Iowa State, who is number 17, both are 3-2 on the season. Michigan, number 18 in the country, 49-24 win over number 21 Minnesota. Minnesota is 0-1 on the season. That's Michigan's first win on the season. Miami, Florida is now 5-1, 19-14 victory. They are ranked number 11 against Virginia, which is 1-4. Cincinnati, number 9 in the country, 42-13 over number 16 SMU, which is now 5-1 on the season. BYU, number 12, is now 6-0 on the season, 52-14 over Texas State. Texas State falls 1-6. Wisconsin picks up their first win against Illinois. Illinois is 0-1, while Wisconsin is 1-0.
Okay.
And this weekend's top 25 games. Georgia is 3-1, taking on Kentucky 2-3. Michigan State 0-1, taking on number 13 Michigan. Michigan has a win on this. Has a win on the season. Iowa State, number 23, 3-2. Kansas, which is now 0-5 on the season. Number 7, Cincinnati taking on Memphis. Memphis is 3-1. Cincinnati is 4-0. Also, Kansas State is 4-1 against West Virginia. That's 3-2. Kansas is ranked number 16 in the country. Coastal Carolina now 5-0 against Georgia State. Georgia State is 2-0. Coastal Carolina is 5-0. The Clemson Tigers take on Boston College. Clemson is now 6-0 on the season, while Boston College is 4-2. Also, Notre Dame tries to stay unbeaten as they are ranked number 4 in the country, taking on Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is 2-4 on the season. Number 17, Indiana and Rutgers. Indiana and Rutgers are both 1-0 on the season. Oklahoma State is 4-0. Will try to stay unbeaten against Texas. That's a 4 o'clock game. Boise State and Air Force. Number 25, Boise State is 1-0 on the season, while Air Force is 1-1 on the season. Also, number 2, Alabama is 5-0, trying to stay unbeaten against Mississippi State, which is 1-3 on the season. Navy 500 at 3-3. Will try to get a win against number 22 SMU, which is 5-1 on the season. That's a 7:30 game on ESPN2. Number 3, Ohio State. Number 18, Penn State. Ohio State's 1-0, while Penn State is 0-1 on the season. 7:30. These last 2 games are also 7:30 games. Missouri is 2-2 against number 10 Florida. Florida is 2-1 on the season. Arkansas 2-2 facing Texas A&M, which is 3-1. They are number 8 in the country. That will be a 7:30 game. Also, number 9 Wisconsin and Nebraska were canceled. COVID-19 related.
That's really something.
Related. Wisconsin was seeking their second win. Nebraska was trying for their first win on the season. Number 24, Oklahoma is 3-2. Texas Tech is 2-3 on the season. That's an 8 o'clock game. Number 15, North Carolina 4-1 on the season against Virginia, which is now 1-4 on the season. 8 o'clock. And finally, Western Kentucky 2-4 taking on number 11 BYU. BYU is 6-0 on the season. Western Kentucky is 2-4.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Now, Jack, tell us a little bit about the 2 Service Academy games, Navy and Air Force, who both lost last week.
Yes, both teams. Well, I'll start with Air Force. They lost. It was their second game of the season. It was a 17-6 loss against their Mountain West Division rival, San Jose State. And the only score of the game for the Falcons came in the fourth quarter on a 34-yard touchdown pass from Zeke Daniels to Kyle Patterson. Both teams were actually scoreless in the first half. The Falcons racked up 206 yards of rushing on the ground, 298 yards total offense. Wide receiver Brandon Lewis led the Falcons with 6 catches for 36 yards and tied for the team lead with 60 yards rushing on 9 carries. Fullback Timothy Jackson also ran for 60 yards on 15 carries. Daniels led the Falcons through the year, going 9 of 17 for 9 yards. Patterson led Air Force receivers with 56 yards. Now, defensive back Elisha Palm led with 9 tackles and an interception. Spartan quarterback Nick Starkel, very strong game for him for San Jose State. 22 of 29 passing for 226 yards, 2 touchdowns. Spartan receiver Bailey Gaither had 8 catches for 110 yards. And Air Force is going to be returning to action this weekend, hosting Boise State, another division rival. So we'll see how they them. But interesting, they had a strong game against Navy, and then had a hard time scoring in this game against San Diego State. So it makes you wonder, what Air Force team are we going to be seeing at Michie Stadium coming up in a week?
Yeah, no, it's surprising how they struggled with San Jose State, not scoring in the first half, only 200 yards rushing in the game. Sam, what was your take on Air Force's performance last week?
Well, I feel that I've been vindicated, because last week when we talked, I said that Air Force on paper folks are going to pick Air Force over San Jose State, that I said Air Force is not going to roll San Jose State. San Jose State is a much improved team. They were much improved last year. They beat Army at Michie Stadium, and they came ready to play. Because of the late start of the game, I watched the first half, but then I just couldn't keep my eyes open for the second half. I will say in the first half, Air Force did look like they had scored an apparent touchdown on the goal line. It turned out to be a goal line stand for San Jose State. I think that was a huge momentum shift in the game, because up to that point, Air Force had moved the ball pretty easily against San Jose State and held them to a few 3-and-outs. Personally, I think it's karma for Air Force Academy to have what appears to be an obvious touchdown not called on the field after what happened last year against Army when Jabari Laws was clearly in on 4th and goal, and then it was a no call that did not get overturned because there was not a clear view on the replay. So I did miss the second half. I did read the summary about how the game went down. I looked at some of the highlights, and Jack brought up a good point. What Air Force team are we going to see at Michie Stadium? I think that we'll find out more about the character of Air Force when they play Boise State on Saturday. Boise State is always a tough team. Air Force Academy has beaten Boise State before. They do have the advantage of playing this game at home, but we'll see how they respond this week. And again, I think that's going to be more of an indicator of what the real Air Force Academy team is that is brought to the table this year. However, no matter the outcome of the Boise State game, I will say this about Air Force, and that is the performance that they put in, especially on defense against Navy, that was legit. And similar preparation will be undertaken by the Air Force Academy staff to get ready for the Army team. So Army better study what they did defensively very closely when they dominated Navy a few weeks ago, and be ready for that. Have some offensive answers and adjustments for what they try to do, because they're going to throw out all the stops no matter what happens against Boise State this weekend. Air Force will show up to Michie ready to play, and they will pull out all stops. The only question I had coming out of the San Jose State game, and maybe Jack knows, maybe Ken, their excellent A-back, Rimsberg, got hurt in the first half. I never heard a status on him. Is there a status on Rimsberg?
Now, we'll have to try to see if we can get Coach Niumatalolo's press conference this week and see if he has any update. But boy, I'll tell you, Sam, the coaches are reluctant to talk about injuries. And so it's very hard. Only really the players who you see get hurt on the field can you really, to ask, unless the player doesn't show up for a game in the lineup the next week. So we'll see. But we'll have to listen to Coach Ken Niumatalolo's press conference this week and see what happens. Jack, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that would have to be Coach Troy Calhoun, since we're talking about Rimsberg for Air Force Academy.
Yeah, that's right. Jack, you want to take us through the Navy game last week?
Sure. Sam's been saying for a while that Navy just doesn't look good this year, and boy, was he right about this game. Navy fell to 3-3 with a 37-21 loss at home against Houston. Houston actually had 420 yards total offense, 334 through the air, so they were beating up on that secondary. This is Navy's first AAC loss season. Their quarterback, Dalen Morris, completed 10 of 18 passes for 206 yards, including a 60-yard pass with two left in the half. Touchdown and a 5-yard touchdown pass to C.J. Williams, 106 left in the game. He also threw an interception and was sacked twice. Morris also 14 yards and had a 6-yard touchdown at the end of the quarter. Nelson Smith led the midshipman with 51 yards rushing. This is the big story of the game. The Houston defense held Navy to just 166 yards rushing on 50 carries. That's an average of 3.3 yards per carry, with 78 yards of that in the fourth quarter. So if you do the math, the Houston held the Navy triple option offense to under 100 yards rushing in the through the first 3 quarters of this game, which is it's quite stunning. Now with the loss, Navy is now 3-3, and it was their first loss in the conference of the season, and they're on the road against another opponent, SMU. So that's a rough one for Navy.
No, it is. It's surprising, but it kind of indicates this is not Navy's prime year. But Sam, I think you're absolutely right. About Air Force. Commander-in-Chief trophy is on the line. Air Force wins at Army. They take home the Commander-in-Chief trophy, or they get it from Navy, and they will have that trophy for the year. So that's a big incentive for them when they come into Michie Stadium a week from Saturday. Thinking about Army this week, they have a bye. And talking to Coach Monken, he seemed concerned about injuries with the team. We don't know about Anthony Atkins, the fullback, to play. And so we'll see, who is ready at quarterback. If Christian Anderson is back, if Jamel Jones is back, and if, the Cade Billard, Tyree Tyler combination might be continued. I kind of think from listening to Coach Monken that if it's either Christian Anderson or Cade Billard starting. I think he has some confidence in Billard. One thing we had to have to mention, we talked a little bit with Jordan Blackman, had the 6-yard touchdown run, and we talked to Jordan last night. What a nice young man he is. He hasn't played a lot, came in as a wide receiver, but he is the ultimate team player. Support, he kept saying, sometimes his job is on the field, sometimes his job is talking to players, and essentially being a coach on the bench. It's great to see players on the team like that, Sam.
Yes, I agree totally. One of the toughest things that you could teach these kids is how to be a team player and the importance of putting the team ahead of yourself. Individual accolades, they follow when you support the team. And many players at that age, they just never really make the adjustment or understand how important it is to just do your job, whatever that job is for the team. And he's certainly been someone who's done that for 4 years, and I thought it was absolutely beautiful the way the team celebrated his touchdown at the end of the game on the sideline. You would have thought that Army had just won the national championship or something, the way they celebrated with him, and then they carried him off the field. And I heard that, just to add a little comical twist to it, as they carried him off the field, the team was chanting Rudy in reference to Rudy from Notre Dame. So I know that's really awesome. And it really shines a bright light on what Monken preaches, what he brings to these young men as far as preparing them to be future leaders, to be citizens, and to be just good all-around individuals who are courteous, who are polite, but when the chips are down, they put forth their best effort no matter what. And so, great moment for the Army football team, and I love seeing it.
There's some other young players who did well on Saturday. Tyson Riley, a running back, had 48 yards on 9 carries, got a real chance to play, had one run for 11 yards. And then looking at the defense, young linebacker, freshman Spencer Jones had 7 tackles on the day, 3 solo, 4 assists, and 1 tackle for a loss, actually a tackle and a half for a 5-yard loss. That's a pretty good opening performance. And John Radigan, again, 7 tackles on the day, Cedric Cunningham, 5. Eric Smith had a big game with a sack for a 6-yard loss. And then, of course, the interceptions that came from Cameron Jones. and also from Jabari Moore. The defense is making plays and being in the right place at the right time. The question is when they get up against stiffer competition, as they're going to see next week against Air Force, how they're going to stand up to that. But I think they've had a chance to grow in these games, and they are going to be interesting to watch. But it's great when you see a young freshman named Spencer Jones get in and make 7 plays. He looks like one of the key players of the future.
Well, I think let me just pull this back to the macro and just point out something that just a few years ago we would never have been talking about, and that is we're praising the depth of the Army football team. And the only other time in the modern era I can think of praising depth on the Army football team was when Jim Young coached back when I was a cadet. So what that means is that what Monken and his staff have done in the recruiting department has really sold the package of West Point to some fine football players around the country and brought them on board to America's team. And not only bring them on board to America's team, but they bide their time as team players and they're ready to go when they have the opportunity to perform on the field. In times past, Army has fielded some good teams. I use the 96 team as an example. That team went 10-2. That's the team that lost to Auburn in the Independence Bowl. I went to that Independence Bowl, as a matter of fact. And the year after the 97 season, the difference between the Army football team of 96 and the Army football team of 97 is that every game they showed up thinking they were the team of 96. But guess what? All those seniors on the class of 96 that were the class of 97 that had been on the 96 team that were starters, like Ronnie Makeda, they had all graduated. So there was no depth to them up.
So we're losing you again, Sam.
And Navy is finding out the exact same thing this year. And that is, I said to anyone who would listen last year that Navy was one Malcolm Perry, and their talent is exactly the same this year on the field. Who they have on the field is almost exactly the same as who they fielded last year. They just don't have Malcolm Perry. So, that's what difference having depth on your football team will make. And Mark
and Sam, I think the question is where there may be a lack of depth. And Coach Monken was saying that he's a little thin at certain spots. And I think it's really in the offensive line. They started a freshman, Jordan Law, at left tackle, number 77. Jordan Law is 6'4", 285 from Nashville, Tennessee. And they had Noah Knapp play center, the junior we talked to this week. And they moved Luke McCleary over to right tackle from where he'd been playing at left tackle. And Dean Powell played right guard starting. And they also worked in a couple of other young players. But I think that's one area of concern. It would be the offensive line. And, Peyton Reeder wasn't in the starting lineup. And Connor Bishop was out. And that's, I think, the one area where I'm concerned about depth. And I guess, maybe that's for all college football. It's hard to have two solid offensive lines or two layers of players. What's your thought about the offensive line? Are they strong enough there?
I can look at this two ways. This past Saturday was an opportunity to give some of the depth on the offensive line reps, put them in game time situations where they are under pressure to perform and work as a team, which the offensive line has to do on every play. That being said, when I look across the Army roster, like before the season started, when I look across the Army roster right now, and I look at the offensive linemen, it has been for me, just looking at the size of the players, it has been a little bit of a concern for me, and that is you don't really see very many 300-pounders across the line for the Army team. And some of these players are young. There's, the plebe that you mentioned, he's pushing 285. He's got some more room to grow. But the dominant, and this goes back to my comments about depth and having depth on the Army football team. One of the biggest reasons for a drop-off last year was because of the graduation of probably one of the greatest offensive line, some of the greatest offensive linemen who've ever played together on the line for the Army football team. And they drove up the #1 rushing offense in the country for, 2 years running. I think they were #2 in 2016. But this season, the one thing that you haven't necessarily seen Army do is they haven't consistently put these 350-plus rushing yard games together. They've been putting together some wins, no doubt about that. But I have yet to actually see that completely dominant, Ahmad Bradshaw type offense with one pass in the whole game, and you're just steamrolling people with these long time consuming Army drives and running up 400 yards plus rushing a game that has completely demoralized the other team. So offensive line is part of that. And hopefully the line continues to mature as the season goes, and hopefully the line is healthy for Air Force.
Okay, well, we have an off week for Army. Jack McGuirk, who does Navy play this week?
Navy is playing SMU, and that's going to be a tough game for them. SMU is actually nationally ranked number 22. This is going to be their 4th game of the season. SMU opened the season at home with a 30-27 win over Memphis, and then followed it up with a road win, 37-34 over Tulane. And then this past weekend, they lost to Cincinnati. Cincinnati's number 7, by the way, nationally ranked. 42-13 loss to Cincinnati. So SMU is back home again this weekend against Navy, and they're going to be looking for a win. And I think this is going to be could be another rough game for the midshipmen.
Yes. Okay. Richard Miller, final thought tonight. What game are you going to watch this weekend, Richard?
What game am I going to watch? I'm going to watch 2 games. One, the Notre Dame Georgia Tech game at 3:30, and also the other game, the Ohio State and Penn State game at 7:30.
Okay, very good.
Those games.
Sam Houston, how are you going to occupy yourself with Army on a bye week?
Well, being the gray hog that I am, the 2 games that I'm going to be most interested in this weekend are obviously going to be Navy SMU and Air Force Boise State. And as a result of what my expectation is, I do expect that Air Force is going to have their hands full with Boise State. The one advantage they have is playing at home. I predict Boise State's going to win the game. I don't think they're going to win it going away. I think they're going to win it in a close one. As for Navy, I don't think Navy is going to perform well at all this weekend. As a matter of fact, SMU is going to show up hungry. They're embarrassed about what Cincinnati did to them this past Saturday. They came into the game undefeated. They walked away humiliated. They're going to want to lay the smackdown on Navy, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen. And by the way, as caveat to the Navy SMU game, I want you to keep in mind what I just said about SMU being humiliated by Cincinnati. SMU went into the game undefeated. They got destroyed. The only team that has given Cincinnati a run for the money this whole season has been Army. And quite frankly, Army was in it till the very end. The game was, as we all know, much closer than the final score. If you want to get an indication of where Army and Navy stand head to head against one another, Watch them play SMU this weekend. Watch what the outcome of the game is. Remember how Army performed against Cincinnati. Remember how SMU performed against Cincinnati, and watch how SMU does against Navy. And there you go.
Okay.
So that's what I'll be doing this weekend.
Okay, now Sam, I've been waiting all week to ask you one key question with the announcement of the Army-Navy game to be played at Michie Stadium, and that the invitation has been extended to the entire brigade of midshipmen, all 4,400 of them, to be at West Point and in the stands at Michie Stadium. First time that's ever happened. What's your thought on the invitation extended to the midshipmen to visit West Point?
All kidding aside, it's historic. It was the right thing to do. Army Navy, as you know, is traditionally a neutral site, and the only way that they could make this a neutral site was to invite the brigade. Their only recourse was to do what they did in 1943, and that would have been to divide the Corps cadets up and put half of them on one side of the stadium and make them root for Navy and memorize all the Navy cheers. Well, we wouldn't want to do that. So yeah, we'll bring in the brigade of midshipmen. I just hope they don't let that skanky goat run around on Michie Stadium's turf, because there's going to have to be some serious sanitizing done after the game is over. But this is a very historic moment. I'm disappointed as a fan, as a grad, that I can't go to the Army-Navy game this year. I know I'm not alone in that, but I understand the circumstances, and I really appreciate that Army and Navy work together to make this a reality. It's going to be a great game. It's going to be historic, and one that we'll remember.
No, it certainly will be, and we'll be looking forward to that. Okay, gentlemen, thank you. Jack McGuirk from our SALRadio team in Pelham, from Richard Miller from SALRadio in Florida, and Sam Houston calling from the Beat Navy studio in Huntsville, Alabama. Thank you all, and we'll see you again next week as Army will be preparing to play Air Force in the second leg of the Commander-in-Chief Trophy Series, and that's going to be a good one. So,
Beat Air Force.
For everybody at Sons of the American Legion Radio and the 2 million veterans of the American Legion, thank you for watching. This is Ken Kraetzer.